Thank you. And I mean, thank you to the audience for staying with us. I know if you put programming languages into a talk title, people might run to Conf, to the center stage. So thank you very much for being here.
Well, we decided that there have been a lot of fancy slides. So we decided let's have some handsome faces on the screen so that you have a welcome break.
Yeah. So I'm guessing 99% of this audience are here either for programming languages or for Gautam's sexy haircut. Gautam, how was your flight from India? Because Gautam just came in from India, like literally 15 minutes ago. He's not sweating because he's nervous. He's sweating because he just walked from the airport to the venue.
Well, it's the same thing that happens when you're coding every time, right?
Exactly.
You always never hit the deadline.
I mean, those images from like Matrix or all those movies, the hacker nerds like sitting there with like a mask in front of the computer, and there's like digital numbers running, and they're like, yeah, I almost got it. Like,
but that's not me. Well, here's to get things going. The idea of our discussion here, discussion/debate/ no more punches, is about whether you should learn one language and master it, or you should be a polyglot and learn a lot of languages and be just about competent in them. Nick, where do you stand on that?
I am, you want a serious answer or some? Okay, let's do the serious. I think we only have 20 minutes. So I am the stereotype of, what's the name of the people who do one thing only?
Master them.
Master, okay, so I'm the master of one language. I do Ruby most of the time. I am not saying that I'm addicted or married to Ruby, so I stick with Ruby because I think getting getting good at a language helps me to master other languages. But so I've tried to stay away from learning too many different languages. I'm more interested in the concept. So I am definitely not a polyglot. Gautam,
interesting, because
I've heard that your parents called you Gautam because you like the programming language Go.
Ooh. Well, I have been programming in Ruby in my past life. I program a lot in Go right now, but I also worked in C, Java, Python, and I believe that knowing all the nuances of other languages actually helps me make a better programmer myself.
I agree.
So here's the big question, and I'm sure we have a very diverse audience here. I get this question a lot, Nick. Sometimes you cannot choose your language. Sometimes you're forced to just work in the language that you're given in your workplace.
That's right.
What do you do then?
I change my workplace.
Well, I'm sure we're not at the liberty to do this every time. And Nick, by the way, has been contributing a lot in open source, so he does have the liberty to do that. But let's talk about the mere mortals. And mortals like us, we need to focus on the language. Now, my personal opinion is that there is no one language which is like the nirvana. There is no nirvana language. Every language has its nuances. Every language has its good things and its bad things. What is important is you pick up one language, go all the way down into the details, master it as much as you can before moving on. The before moving on part is, I believe, what you disagree with, Rink.
Well, I mean, we basically agree on that mastering a programming language is building the fundament for you to be a good software engineer. Because, I mean, it's the same, like, let's say I learn Chinese and I learn Japanese and I learn Russian and German at the same time. I'm going to be okay with all those languages, but I'm not going to be a master. So I think you should learn this language, this one language you get to work with at work or because you want to. And then on top of that, you spend some time of your day or of your week learning about new concepts, but you don't have to master all those languages. Yeah, that's exactly the same with like a normal language. I don't want to be a master of all those languages. I want to focus on that language and then that language. So I think we agree, which is terrible because this is supposed to be like a...
Well, here's the kicker. What do you call mastering a language anyway? There is nothing called. Nobody, in my opinion, can say, I have mastered it all. Oops.
So I thought about mastering a language means you are writing extensions or libraries for that language. That means you master it. But I'm actually wrong, because I remember when I started learning Ruby, like 10 years ago or something, I was about this big, I instantly started to write extensions. Like after 2 hours, I literally started coding extensions for Ruby. And that doesn't mean I'm great. It means the language makes it really simple. So I think mastering, when you're a master at language, you know what's bad about the language, not what's good about the language. So I don't know. Because after 2 hours of Ruby, I can't say I'm a master, but I was already doing extensions. Now, I think I know Ruby pretty well, and I know what parts I hate about it. And I think that makes me a master, right?
Well, I have a contrary opinion to that.
Oh.
I believe that if you actually start looking into the nuances of a language, and then you take a break, look at the nuances of a different language. For me, for example, I used to work a lot in Ruby. Now I'm working a lot in Go. Now, when I look in the way the language was made, all the features that are there in a language, I can actually come back and I can probably give talks like why Ruby must go. You know?
So actually, I'm interested. What made you do most of your software now in Go? I think you said something like that in one of our conversations.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things was that while I really like Ruby where it is, there are certain things that Ruby had a shortfall on, especially for multi-core computations, for
right.
large-scale concurrency.
Modern language concepts like method overloading, pattern matching. I could go on for hours to rant about Ruby, but hey, I'm a Ruby guy.
Well, Go helped me understand what is going back to the 70s, coming back from if you had to design a new language, why would I go like that? And why would I design a language which actually gets at par with how hardware has become faster and cheaper? And that's where I realized that Go and Ruby could actually coexist, which in turn implies that I don't actually have to be a master of any one particular language. But if I use all the good parts of different languages, I can actually make an excellent polyglot system.
How do you know what's the good part?
You test it out. You work with different languages. So I've tried out various other languages to see which is the ones I feel close to. A language for me is like your first love, which is always your first love.
Oh, so thank you.
It's a wrong stage for you, Nick, but when you're looking at a language, you feel it instantly. Yeah, you know what? This is something that I really want to work in. Or you lose track of time. Or you're trying to figure something out where you realize that, hey, you know what? This is not going to solve all the problems, but it's fun getting there.
That's
so
right.
I would rather work with a lot of different languages and then come down and say, you know what? These are the 2 or 3 languages that I really like, but knowing about other languages gives me the benefit of knowing, what a good language should be.
I mean, this is right. I'm not sitting in my room having a red Ruby on my desk and stare into the Ruby all day. Like, I try to learn about stuff like what is Go bringing, what new concepts, what is Java doing recently, how has PHP evolved in the last couple of years, because PHP, for example, has done so much new stuff to the language. I was doing some research, but I'm definitely not a master of any of those other languages. I'm still interested in where are these languages going, what are they bringing, what tools are they bringing, what new abstractions, because that's what I'm interested in, abstractions. How can I write stuff fast and stable? But I'm still wondering, why did you choose Go over, 100,000 other languages?
Well, I actually looked at the other languages. I looked at Clojure. I looked at Haskell. I looked at Rust. And I found that I like procedural languages. I like things the way they are written. I like the language constructs. I like the simplicity, the safety of the language, which is why I just chose Go. However, Nick, I'll take the conversation in a different direction now. It is partly in stuff we both agree. But I do get this question often, like, what about open source languages and languages which are not open sourced? I know we both are very avid open source developers, but given a person who's just joined a company, or given a person who's mastered languages which are not open source, what kind of advice could we actually give them? Apart from change your job.
So what language is not open source? I'm just trying to...
Well, everyone says it's open source, and
You
this
mean
is
like-
not the forum to say it, but a lot of languages you're stuck with.
I got the hint. Well, I actually don't see why the language itself has to be open source, to be honest, because, I mean, for example, let's take Ruby. Ruby is open source, and Ruby, in all fairness, hasn't evolved on a language level in the last 10 years. So I don't see where there's a benefit in open source. I mean, I love Ruby. I know there's a lot of people working on it, but on a conceptual level, other languages have moved on faster. For example, Go. Go is open source or not?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Java is open source or not? Swift.
Well, Swift. There you go.
Swift is closed source.
Yes, Swift is not open. So,
Swift is
but you still have a lot of people working in Swift.
brand new language, and it's
Now there's new things like Kotlin coming in, and people are picking it up too. So the other thing, right? Most of us work in a service-oriented architecture or work with a lot of microservices, where I really don't care about which language it is. I only care about the interface and the interaction between them. In my opinion, given that we are all working on different services and different microservices and different responsibilities, I don't really care about which language it's built in. Do you?
well, if I use someone else's software, I am definitely not interested in the language. I'm only interested in the API, the interface this software gives me to use it, basically. So that's another fair point of having a heterogeneous system where you don't care about the language.
Interesting. So we're coming towards the end of our discussion. We have about a minute left. What kind of advice would you want to give in a quick 15, 20-second stuff about, whether you should go with different languages or you master only one and stick with it?
Okay, I would say go and learn, and I'm not saying go the programming language. Go out, learn one language, learn a modern language, not like C or something. Learn a modern language, take a couple of months to actually master it in a way, and then have a look at what other languages are offering. But don't try to be a master of all the languages and like the polyglot, the stereotypical person that knows everything, because it's impossible.
Interesting. I share a similar opinion with a slight difference. I say that master 3 languages at the same time. However, be sure that you're not taking the syntax of one language into the other or trying to confuse the syntax of one language, which happens very often, by the way. It happens to me too. But what you want to look at when you're looking at a language is understand why it was made, how it was made, and how it can be used in the other languages for its betterment. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're out of time.
Beautiful closing, by the way.
Perfect.
Very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.